It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. Today's August 28th, and I want to welcome you to... Gosh, this is the end of week 6. This is episode 30 of Coffee and Cloud Native. My name is Adrian Goins. I'm sorry, I look confused today. I actually do know my name. I was just trying to think back. Wow, it's been 30 episodes. So every night, I and my army of bots scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and every day you'll find me here with a coffee that I don't actually drink very much of because I talk a lot, to share the bits that I find interesting. This is a curated list of content. I go through around 200 submissions every night. Today is a day that is difficult to talk. I go through around 200 submissions every night. I select a handful of them for the next day's show. And today, actually, we don't have very many things to talk about, so we'll be able to talk slowly and explore them in greater detail. So these are tools and products that I myself would use or do use, and I'm excited to share them with you. So let's pause for a moment and see who do we have in the chat. Oh, I gotta bring the chat window over. It's all the way over there. Good morning, everybody. Justin, Ariel, Peter, Roger, Marcel, Michael, good morning. Cześć Wojtek, got Chris here, Sajad, good morning again, welcome back. Where did you go on vacation? Just like staycation, hang around your house? Joachim from Sweden, nice, thank you for joining us today. And Steve, it's great to see you here, buddy. Moz, good morning. Espen, good morning, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining me. So I struggled last night with, I still had, 140 something things to go through, but I don't know if it's just that it's like August and all of Europe is on vacation, or if it's the week after KubeCon and nobody cares, but there just wasn't really a lot of stuff. People are posting content that's old, and I try to limit what I talk about to stuff that has had a new release or new features or new something within the last roughly 72 hours. So I considered pulling older stuff out, and then I was like, you know what? Let's take this opportunity to explore the tool of the day in greater detail. But first, before we do that, we got some stuff to talk about. Let me see if I can get this chat window in a place where I can keep an eye on it. How about over there? And, oh, I apologize in advance. I'm super sniffly today, so I have a mute button, and if I suddenly like drop myself off the screen, it's because I also have like tissues, and nobody wants to watch me blow my nose. I'll try not to sniffle, but I make no promises. So what do we got? Dun, 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 dun. Daniel, whose name I don't know how to pronounce. Daniel, if you're watching the show, tell me how to pronounce your last name, because I hate butchering people's names. It's either, I'm not even going to try. Daniel, but it bubbled up to the surface a couple of days ago, and I wanted to bring it on because it's actually really smart. If you have a pod that's misbehaving for whatever reason, the application on it has gone sideways. Earlier we talked about Kube Forensics. That was in episode 25, where you can, it's a utility that'll tar up the state of a pod, so all of its manifest, its runtime state, the Docker inspect and everything, and all of the file systems, and put it out at S3 so that you can forensically pick through it later and figure out what its issue is. This is less for debugging the application and more for figuring out how the bad guys got into your pod and what it was that they were able to do. This, on the other hand, is when you've got a pod that you just need to, whatever, the application went crazy, and you need to fence it? No, fencing isn't the right word. Basically, you need to just isolate it from everything else so that it can live in its own little world and be bad all at once without affecting anything, and then you can go in and actually look at its runtime state, which often is more important. So he has just a really easy way to do this. Change the label on the pod that the service is using as the selector for sending traffic to it, and then that detaches it from everything. So it's not just the service that's using that, but the replica set is also using that. The replication controller is also using that. And so now it's detached and it's just in an orphaned state off to the side. The replica set creates a new pod because it sees that it only has 2 and it needs more. And and that's it. So hopefully your application started back up fine, but you've still got this one that's hanging out over here, and you can do other stuff with it. You could attach another service to it. You could create another replica set that takes control of it. You can poke at it in isolation. I like this. Well, I like this for a number of reasons, and actually the reason I was about to say I'm not going to say because it's more relevant in the next thing that I'm going to talk about. Justin wants to know, what if I am a bot? Oh, well, actually, hold on. Marcel says it would be nice to see an episode about the bots. That's like the secret sauce. And it's not that exciting. There are places on the internet where you can just watch content go by, and I don't have the time to watch that, so I have bots that watch it and pull out things based on keywords and then stick it into a Mongo database. And it's extensible, so I can pull from multiple sources, but basically I just load everything into a big bucket throughout the day. Well, actually, I run the report every 24 hours. So from starting at about 5 o'clock yesterday until the next report time, which is usually 5 o'clock the next day, it just collects information and it sticks it in a bucket. And then the report pulls all of that stuff out and generates a report. And then I go through, and the bulk of my work is spent going through that report, and I do multiple passes across it where I'm like, okay, interesting, not interesting. And I open up all the links. I end up with a browser full of links and tabs. And then I go through those and filter out the things that are not actually interesting, that are too promotional, that don't have a free tier, that aren't open source, that aren't cloud native, that are too old, that are whatever. And I cook that down into a list of stuff that then I go back and I actually look through all of the content and write up show notes, which gets me to where I am today. That is a horrifically inefficient process. And my primary objective right now is to get more intelligence around that so that it's more automated. Because my process is repeatable, I need to build a programming layer that can repeat the next layers of selection that I do, which is why I've been spending time with Dataiku, who I almost said Dataiku, 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 whatever. Those cool cats that have that cool data science and machine learning application. I've been going through their academy, which is generally quite good, and learning about machine learning and data science, and actually signed up for the Coursera course on machine learning yesterday because it's really cool. Because it's really cool. And I can use it for anything that I do where I listen to information coming out of sources and then turn that information into stuff that's relevant for you guys. Beyond that, it's the secret sauce. Remember that I told you that I'm a bad programmer, though, so how secret can it actually be? And what if I am a bot? That was Justin's thing. What if I am a bot? Boop, 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 boop. My wife thinks that I'm a... You ever play Fallout? Fallout 4, Fallout 3? They have a class of character in there that's a synth, and they're more androidy. So in Fallout 4, one of the primary characters was a private detective synth named Valentine, and she often makes jokes that she thinks I might be a synth because I get along way too well with technology. I can smell inefficiencies in the internet, like something's not working right, and I'm like, oh, that feels like a router between here and Santiago that they've done something weird with or whatever. Just like an unreasonable level of awareness of what's going on with internet and technology. And she's like, you're a robot. I know you're a robot. Whereas she, on the other hand, who can hear me right now, she has the opposite relationship with technology. She has the relationship with technology where her computer knows that she's not technological, and it messes with her. It will do stuff to her that just shouldn't happen. It's like it's a misbehaving little imp. And she'll call me in and she'll be like, okay, I've tried this 5 times and it's doing the same thing. If I do this, this, and this, and this happens. And I'm like, that's not possible. Please demonstrate it for me. And she goes to demonstrate it for me, and it's the 6th time, and it doesn't happen. Because the computer knows that I'm standing there, and it knows that I know that it's full of crap. So, so she gets really frustrated. On the flip side, though, she's an amazing artist, and I have difficulty drawing stick people that look realistic. So, we all got our own thing. Suggested it was a staycation with a mix of some home renovation work. Very nice. I am looking forward to doing some home renovation work this weekend, pulling out some more blackberry bushes, doing some cleanup in the house. The new addition that we had to stop work on has just become like a repository of where we're putting like empty boxes and stuff like that. So I gotta clean that out because it's a mess now and stuff like that. Michael says that it's totally a real thing that computers sense sysadmins and they stop misbehaving. I call it the fear. You're absolutely right. It's the fear. You can just walk into it like they know. I don't know how to define all of this, and I say it kind of jokingly, but I believe that technology develops a personality. I don't know why. I'm not saying it's alive or anything like that, but I have had enough computers throughout my life that I guess you can call it like the ghost in the machine, that it's one thing to say that, okay, it's the collection of random cruft that affects the way that it operates or, what's running in memory or something, but it's more than that. When I worked for Urban Fetch, I might have told you this story. When I worked for Urban Fetch back in the .com craze, what I call the first internet revolution, Urban Fetch ran out of money because that's what you did when you were at .com back in the year 2000. They ran out of money and they shut down. But they had all of us who worked in the IT department, they said that they would give us an extra 2 weeks of severance if we stayed until all of the employees left and then tore apart all of the data center and the various office, the whatever back office stuff that was going on. So we were like, sure. And it was at the last office that I was at, which was a warehouse on the west side of Manhattan, that I went in and I just needed to detach a Cisco router and some other stuff. And I had my laptop. And my laptop, I got there, I opened it up. It was the last thing that I had to do, like, period, forever. And it just went pop. And that was it. So I called my colleague, Greg, and I was like, dude, my laptop just exploded. Like, come up here because we gotta deal with all of this stuff. And I don't remember why we needed laptops, but whatever. We needed to do something in a system before we could just power it off. So he shows up with his laptop, and it's not like it was connected to power or anything. His laptop, he opens it up, pop. They both knew that it was their last day, and they just checked out before we could disconnect them. So we just unplugged everything and went home. And that sort of stuff happens. Like, the technology knows. If you're ever going to replace a system, and it's less important with cloud computing now because we can just like unplug them virtually and rip and replace. But if you ever have a physical piece of technology that you're working with and you're going to upgrade it, don't let it know. Don't tell it that it's going to be upgraded. Don't tell it that you've gotten something that's better, because it will have a broken heart and it will do horrible things before you're ready for that upgrade to take place. So instead you have to lie to it. You have to say, no, you are important. You are being moved to the special projects division. You are being tasked with the most important thing that we need to do in this house, which is like monitor that UPS. And give it lots of praise and pet it and stuff like that until you can take the plug out. Surprise it. Surprise! No more. All right, Chris is saying that it's become very philosophical. It's because I don't have very much actual technology to talk about, so I need to fill in the gaps with something else, something more chatty. All right. We'll go back to the technology, the stuff. So the next thing is a beautiful puppy. I thought that... It's actually not just a beautiful puppy, although it is a beautiful puppy, right? The next is about how to sniff Kubernetes pod requests and headers using TCP dump. I have always used a sidecar pod for this. Murali Paluru from Rancher, his name is leo.cloud on GitHub. He built a Swiss Army knife container many, many, many years ago that I still use to this day. You can attach it as a sidecar, and isn't that a beautiful dog? I'm just gonna put him up on the screen. You can attach it as a sidecar and then reload your application, and because containers and pods share network space, you can sniff the traffic going in and out of the pod. The problem with this is it reloads the application. So if you need to do real-time runtime debugging of something that's going wrong right now, that's not going to work. There are other ways that you can do this. There was something that we had on the show a few weeks ago where you could attach to services and run Minim proxy to actually proxy communications between the services. That was also super cool. But I found this beautiful dog where if you just want to, let's see if I can make that bigger for you guys. If you just want to sniff traffic So first, exec into the pod, figure out what its Ethernet ID is by catting sysclass net eth0 iflink, and then go find what node it's on, SSH into that node, or use nsenter that we showed you a few days ago, run IP link and grep that ID, you'll get an interface name, and then if you run TCP dump on that interface, you get all the traffic that's going to the pod. How sexy is that? That's way cooler than connecting a sidecar container. That's like elite ninja sysadmin stuff. So then all your TCP dump, now you're running it directly on the host, and so you can, send that out to Wireshark if you want, bring it back, do whatever you can do with TCP dump. So real-time network packet capture of running pods through Slick. Because remember, these things, they're just processes and virtualization. I forget that. I feel like they're separate entities. But none of this is magic. It's just compartmentalization. What do we got going on in the chat here? Peter says, if Rancher doesn't work out, I have a career in sysadmin self-help books. Maybe more like a cult. Like how to bend technology to your will. How to leverage the prosperity of life. I think if you have a cult, you have to talk like that, right? Isn't that like in the Cult 101 handbook? Is there a Coursera course on how to start a cult? Michael says, I was in a server room. I thought everybody had gone home, and I was arguing with a server. And one of my recruiters came in and asked who I was talking to. When I had BET as a client for my MSP, I'm not aware of this, but apparently I still do it. But they said that they would be having a problem. We'd be in the data center, and I would go over to the rack, and it was one of those like pull-out keyboard monitor things that you could open up, and a KVM you could connect to the various servers. So I'd get on the machine, and I would like do whatever, and then at the end of everything that I did, I would go like Neo or something like that. So I'd type on stuff, and I would do this. Like, I now submit to the universe of the internet the spell to control the server. I've never been aware of it. At least I wasn't aware of it then until they just continuously laughed at me about it. But I've caught myself still to this day doing it. And that was back in 2002. Yeah. Next up. Do you use ZFS? Is Trix in the chat? Trix, are you here? Oh, my wife is here. She heard puppy. She joined. She really loves dogs. Trix, if you're here, say what's up, because we're talking about ZFS. Or if any of the rest of you are FreeBSD fanatics, let's talk about ZFS. This is from my friends over at OpenEBS. So OpenEBS, CNCF project, shared governance with Maya Data. Maya Data also is involved in Litmus Chaos, who we also have on the show. So these guys are great. They have a local PV storage class. Once again, one of those things where my brain was just I'm not going to give you any words. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. So it's a CSI driver for ZFS. Basically, all you need to do is cook up a ZFS pool on your hosts, and this allows you to create ZFS PVs. Hey, yay! Adrian figured it out. To create ZFS PVs on the pool for local path. Now, in general, I don't like. Sorry, not local path, local PV. Well, the same thing. I don't like provisioning local PVs. Because it just ties you to a host. But there are places where it is relevant. For example, if you're using a solution like OpenEBS or any other container-attached storage solution like Longhorn or probably Portworx or probably Storage OS, I'm not sure, and you have your replicas on multiple hosts, well, then the the need to have them in a shared location is no longer relevant because the container attached storage system takes care of that for you. So you can have lots of local PVs scattered around, and then those replicas are striped and moved around and all of that other stuff. So yeah, it also makes sense on a single node cluster. So if you're going to work with something that's local PV, I mean, why not bring all of the awesomeness of ZFS into it so that you can get volume management and snapshots and copy on write and all of that other deliciousness that comes with ZFS. They had an update. The update itself isn't a big deal other than it brought it to my attention. And I mean, come on, it's ZFS. What's not to love? Oh, and hi, OpenEBS. Oh, Trix is here! Woohoo! Trix, we're talking about ZFS. So I got a shout out to you for your FreeBSD loyalty. And yeah, so there you go. Thanks for joining. He said he was watching on the PS4. Trix, do you have any cool ZFS stories? You know, did you tell ZFS that it was being replaced with... Oh, how many of you remember RiserFS? Huh? There's a flashback. I thought RiserFS was really, really, really cool. It was a great file system until the creator of it... Well, we all know what happened there. Doesn't change the fact that the file system was awesome, but it kind of did ruin its marketability. I seem to be able to just talk about whatever throughout the show and use up all of the time. So before we get to the tool of the day, let's talk about this. This is synator, I don't know, Skeletor. It is a secret and ConfigMaps synchronizer. When you create ConfigMaps and secrets in your Kubernetes cluster, they are scoped to a namespace. And, okay, so if you're using Rancher with projects, you can actually set it to scope secrets to the project. And what that does is Rancher just copies it to all of the namespaces in the project. Maybe that's still not what you want. Maybe you have namespaces even in a project in Rancher that don't need to see the secret nuclear launch codes or whatever you have in a secret. So there's this, which just came out a few days ago and looks fantastic. This will, you can annotate secrets and annotate namespaces, and then, or config maps. So you annotate the secret of the config map saying, yes, I want this synchronized, and then you annotate what namespaces you want it synchronized to, and it, when you create the secret or config map, or when you update it, it gets automatically copied to multiple locations. Sounds pretty simple, right? Looks like a great tool. Looks super simple. Super, super. It looks gloriously simple. Glorious, darling. Glorious, yes. And now let's talk about the tool of the day. Yay, Justin says... Justin says he was looking for Senator. You're welcome. And Trick says Hans was a bad boy. Yes, he was a bad boy. That's too bad. Anyway, moving on. Serverless. I've never believed in serverless. In fact, in my first tour of duty with Rancher, a CFP that William and I, if you've gone through the academy, you know who William is. A CFP that William and I submitted to KubeCon was that we were going to have an on-stage, like live debate, like a presidential debate about serverless, where he was in favor of it and I was against it. I come from the system administration world of things. When I hear you don't need servers, like that scares the crap out of me. Particularly since in serverless, you still need servers. It's just you don't care. But somebody has to care. So I was like, this is dumb. This is like the dumbest thing ever, whatever. Okay, but I run serverless stuff now because I felt it was important for me to understand it by actually putting my hands on it and using it, and then figuring out if I liked it or if I didn't. And I now believe that it has a place for a certain type of application. But the serverless platform that I'm running right now is based off of Docker container images. And with the recent change to Docker Hub's pricing and retention, if I'm not updating my container images, they're going to get deleted. So for me, that's not a big deal. I'll just go and run a container registry somewhere else. And in fact, I have one here at the house. I can put Nexus out there, like whatever. But for most people, that may not be the case. So I went looking for serverless solutions that aren't container image based. And the first one that I came across was Fission. I haven't had time to look at Fission, but since I had some time last night, because I only had 4 other things to talk about on the show, I went and spun it up, and it's pretty neat. This isn't a comparison between the solution that I'm using and this, but more a demonstration of the features that Fission has, and the fact that it's not based on container images. The thing that first caught my attention is that it was a really small font type. There we go. They call out a fast cold start, so less than 100 milliseconds from cold start. I always spin my serverless stuff down to 0 because I only need it about once an hour. It's part of the bots, part of the bot infrastructure. But it takes, I mean, again, it's not a big deal for me to wait a few seconds for a pod to actually start. But I went and looked at this, and sure enough, the way that this works is they keep a pool of environmental pods running that they then swap the functions into at runtime. I'm pretty sure that's how they're doing it. Fast spin up, and then all of the things associated with serverless, scale up, scale down, and so on. They bind directly to a GitOps style model. So instead of having direct functions that you have to control, you can actually push them out to a repo, and the serverless platform will watch the repo and pull changes in. So that's great also if you're running the same functions on multiple deployments of Fission. It has a bunch of integrations. It integrates with Istio. It supports whatever, all serverless stuff supports lots of languages, and it does auto scaling. It can trigger from, yeah, so they don't have this here, but if I go to the docs, it can trigger from, so first of all, it does all of the logging is sent to standard out, so you can pick it all up just as container logs with FluentD or whatever. It can watch Kubernetes events and trigger functions based on that. It can watch a message queue and actually subscribe to queues. And it has a cron job-like timer function where, cron job like Kubernetes cron jobs, where you can actually fire functions on an interval. So, well, yeah. So I'm using Hugin right now as my trigger for the bots, but I could just take that functionality out and put it directly into here and say, you know what, once an hour, go be a bot and go collect stuff for me. Its documentation kind of sucks. They make some assumptions that are common in serverless. For example, if you want to attach it to an ingress, then you have to deploy the route to the function and say go make an ingress. And if you're using a regular ingress controller, that's probably fine. But if you're using an API gateway or glue or something that's not an ingress, you're going to have to go figure out how to make those routes yourself. So what I did is I had it go create an ingress, and then I went and looked at what it was doing, and it's actually not that complicated. It's just sending routes and paths to the router function that exists within Fission. The thing, however, that I want to demonstrate is right now probably, we're 2 minutes before the hour, right now probably all of my functions are actually spun down. So if I post this, which is a URL, it'll convert shortened URLs into full URLs. This is going against my current service, which had 0 pods running, and you see that it took 6.5 seconds for that to run. Subsequent runs, now that the pod is running, are at about 1.5. So this is 1.4, and this is going from my house out in Chile to my Kubernetes cluster out in DigitalOcean, and then, of course, back to here. So operationally, about 1.5 seconds. The exact same code running inside of Fission, also with nothing running. From cold start, 1.3 seconds, and then subsequent operations are at about 0.7. So this one's 0.6, 0.7. So literally 400% improvement from cold start and 50 to 60% improvement in operation, and not based on Docker container images. Hey, Jason's here. Thanks for joining, man. So if you're looking for a serverless solution, other than the fact that their documentation could use some help, I think that Fission is a great place for you to go. So that is today's tool of the day with some further explanation because we had the time. And now let's do a last check of the chat. Dun, 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 dun. Peter, did you make the solution you're currently using? I assume that's talking about the serverless solution. I wrote the code for the functions, but I didn't make the solution. And since I don't want this to be a comparison between that solution and this solution, and more just a demonstration of functionality, like there's nothing wrong with the solution that I'm using right now. It's fantastic. I think J Ether, and he's like, oh, I must go to the show. All right, so you guys are talking about Istio. I'll let you continue doing that, and I will wrap up the show. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, the A-Team theme. Sometimes I just randomly start singing the A-Team thing. Dun 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 dun. It's like almost as cool as the My Lucky Day song that I start the show with. So thank you all for joining me for this very, very low-key session of Coffee and Cloud Native. All of the links and the timestamps. I was doing so well. All of the links and the timestamps. Should I put my cult robe on? All of the links and the timestamps will be up in the video description. About a half an hour after the show ends. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll get a notification when that happens. If you have something you would like me to consider for the show, please hit me up and let me know. My contact details are in the video description, or you can tweet with the CNCN hashtag and I will pick it up. If I mentioned a tool that you use, please tell me in the comments. I love hearing about people's experiences with these things. Even when you guys show up and you say, hey, you were talking about a tool that you said was awesome and it sucks. That's good to know. Or you were saying that this tool... I often get feedback from the people who are the maintainers or the creators of the tools where I'll ask a question and they'll come in and they'll explain stuff, and that's also really helpful. The whole purpose of the show is to educate and inform, not to judge. Whatever solution you choose is the right solution for you, and I just want to be here to talk about technology because really, honestly, it's amazing. It's just amazing. So I will be here every weekday to talk for as long as you come and join me, and as long as there's something to talk about. There's always going to be something to talk about. It's Friday. Have a great day, everyone. Keep learning. Have a nice weekend. Enjoy your life. I will see you in the next show. Bye-bye.